Welcome to Billerica Public Library's May edition of Let's Talk Books recommendations. Sit back, relax, and enjoy listening to some great books that our patrons have read for the last month. We have a selection of mysteries, romances, true crime, and much more for you to enjoy. The Thin Man by Dashiell Hammett. This is book one out of two. A lawyer friend asks Nick to help him find a killer and reintroduces him to a family of Richard Wynant, a more than eccentric inventor who disappeared from society 10 years before. His former wife and lush and manipulative Mimi has remarried a European fortune hunter who turns out to be a vindictive former associate of her first husband and is bent on ruining the Wynant family's fortune. Wynant's children, Dorothy and Gilbert, seem to have inherited the family aversion to straight talk. Dorothy, who has matured into a beautiful young woman, has a crush on Nick, and so, in a hero worshipping way, does Mama's boy Gilbert. Nick and Nora respond kindly to their neediness as Nick tries to make sense of misinformation, false identities, far fetched alibis, and at the center of the confusion, the mystery of the Thin Man, Richard Wynant. Is he mad? Is he a killer? Or is he really an eccentric inventor protecting his discovery from intellectual theft? Cocaine Blues by Kerry Greenwood, book one out of 21. The London season is in full fling at the end of the roaring 1920s, but the Honorable Freeney Fisher, she of the green-gray eyes, garters, and outfits that should not be sprung suddenly on those of nervous dispositions, is rapidly tiring of the tedium of arranging flowers, making polite conversations with retired colonels, and dancing with weak-chinned men. Instead, Franny decides it might be rather amusing to try her hand at being a lady detective in Melbourne, Australia. Almost immediately from the time she books into the Windsor Hotel, Franny is embroiled in mystery, poisoned wives, cocaine smuggling rings, corrupt cops, and communism, not to mention erotic encounters with the beautiful Russian dancer, Sasha D. Lis, until her adventure reaches its steamy end in the Turkish baths of Little Lonsdale Street. Tension and danger rise like stream, and Franny must save herself and other young women before it's too late. A Study in Scarlet Women by Sherry Thomas, book one out of six. With her inquisitive mind, Charlotte Holmes has never felt comfortable with the unassuming expected of the fairest sex in upper-class society. But even she never thought she would become a social para, an outcast fending for herself on the mean streets of London. When the city is struck by a trio of unexpected deaths and suspicion falls on her sister and her father, Charlotte is desperate to find the true culprits and clear the family name. She'll have help from friends new and old, a kind-hearted widow, a police inspector, and a man who has long loved her. But in the end, it will be up to Charlotte, under the assumed name Sherlock Holmes, to challenge society's expectations and match wits against an unseen mastermind. Helter Skelter by Vincent Belgalzi. In the summer of 1969 in Los Angeles, a series of brutal, seemingly random murders captured headlines across America. A famous actress and her unborn child, an heiress to a coffee fortune, a supermarket owner, and his wife were among the seven victims. A thin trail of circumstances eventually tied the Tate LaBanca murders to Charles Manson, a would-be pop singer of small talent living in the desert with his family of devoted young women and men. What was his hold over them, and what was the motivation behind such savagery? In the public imagination over time, the case assumed the proportions of myth. The murders marked the end of the 60s and became an immediate symbol for the dark underside of the era. I've Got You Under My Skin by Mary Higgins Clark, book one out of seven. When Laurie Moran's husband was brutally murdered, only 3-year-old Timmy saw the face of his father's killer. 5 years later, his piercing blue eyes still haunt Timmy's dreams. Laurie is haunted by more. The killer's threat to her son as he fled the scene. Tell your mother she's next, then it's your turn. Now Laurie is dealing with murder again, this time as the producer of a true crime cold case television show. The series will launch with 20-year-old unsolved murder of Betsy Powell. Betsy, a socialite, was found suffocated in her bed after a gala celebrating the graduation of her daughter and three friends. The sensational murder was news nationwide, reopening the case in its lavish setting and with the cooperation of the surviving guests that night. Laurie is sure to have a hit on her hands. But when the strange friends begin filming, it becomes clear each is hiding secrets, small and large, and a pair of blue eyes is watching events unfold too. The Lady Has a Past by Amanda Quick, Book 5 out of 5. Investigative apprentice Lara Brazier, the newest resident of Burning Cove, is unsettled when her boss suddenly disappears. Lara knows something has happened to Raina Kirk and tracks down her last known appearance at the exclusive hotel and health spa. The health spa is known for its luxurious offerings and prestigious clientele and wealthy socialite background. Lara desperately wanted to leave behind is perfect for this undercover job. When Lara lacks an investigative experience, she makes up for gut instinct, and her gut isn't happy that she's saddled with a partner by Luther Pell, Raina's dangerous lover, who wants to bring in someone with more experience to help. Instead of the suave, pistol-packing private eye she expected, though, Simon Cage is a mild-mannered, Antiochian book dealer with a quiet academic air and a cool, remote gaze. Lara suspects Simon is much more than what he seems, and her instincts are confirmed when they arrive at the spa and pose as a couple. Simon has a unique gift that allows him to detect secrets, a skill that is crucial in finding Raina. The Search by Nora Roberts. To most people, Fiona Bristow seems to have a wonderful life. A quaint house on the island off of Seattle's coast, a thriving dog training school, and a challenging volunteer job performing canine search and rescue. But Fiona got to this point by surviving a nightmare, an encounter with the Red Scarf Killer, who shot and killed Fiona's cop fiance and his canine partner. On Orcas Island, Fiona has found the peace and solitude necessary to rebuild her life with her three loyal labs. But all that changes on the day an intensely private wood artist, Simon Doyle, barrels up her drive with an out of control puppy desperate for her help. As Fiona embarks on training Jaws and Simon begins to appreciate both dog and trainer, the past tears back into Fiona's life. A copycat killer has emerged out of the shadows, a man whose blood loss has been channeled by a master with one motive: to reclaim the woman who slipped out of his hands. Mindhunter by John Douglas. The behind the scenes chronicle of John E. Douglas's 25-year career in the FBI Investigative Support Unit, where he used psychological profiling to delve into the minds of the country's most notorious serial killers and criminals. During his 25-year career with the Investigative Support Unit, Special Agent John Douglas became a legendary figure in law enforcement, pursuing some of the most notorious and sadistic serial killers of our time. The man who hunted prostitutes for sports in the woods of Alaska, Atlanta child murderer, and Seattle's Green River killer, the case that nearly cost Douglas his life. Douglas examines each crime scene, reliving both the killer and the victim's actions in his mind, creating their profiles, describing their habits, and predicting their next move. Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. Brian Stevenson was a young lawyer when he founded the Equal Justice Initiative, a legal practice dedicated to defending those most desperate and in need: the poor, the wrongly condemned, women and children trapped in the farthest reaches of our criminal justice system. One of his first cases was that of Walter McMillan, a young man who was sentenced to die for a notorious murder he insisted he didn't commit. The case drew Brian into a tangle of conspiracy, political manipulation, and legal brinkmanship, and transformed his understanding of mercy and justice forever. Long Road to Mercy by David Baldacci. Book 1 out of 4. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by its toe. It's seared into Altie Pine's memory. The kidnapper's chilling rhyme as he chose between 6-year-old Altie and her twin sister Mercy. Mercy was taken and Altie was spared. She never saw Mercy again. 3 decades after that terrifying night, Altie Pine works for the FBI. She's the lone agent assigned to the Shattered Rock, Arizona Resident Agency, which is responsible for protecting the Grand Canyon. So when one of the Grand Canyon's mules is found stabbed to death at the bottom of a canyon and its rider missing, Pine is called in to investigate. It soon seems clear that the lost tourist had something more mysterious going on than sightseeing. But just as Pine begins to put together clues pointing to a terrifying plot, she's abruptly called off the case. If she disobeys direct orders by continuing to search for the missing man, it will mean the end of her career. But unless Pine keeps working the case and discovers the truth, it could spell the very end of democracy in America as we know it. K-Team by David Rosenfeld, Book 1 out of 3. Corey Douglas and his canine partner, Simon Garfunkel, have recently retired from the police force. Not ready to give up life yet, they come up with a proposal for fellow former cop Laurie Carpenter and her investigating partner, Marcus. Laurie and Marcus, who help out Laurie's lawyer husband, Andy, on cases, have been chafing to jump back into investigating on their own, so they are in. They call themselves the K-Team in honor of Simon. Their first job as a private investigator comes to them from Judge Henry Henderson, who's known as a very tough but fair judge, and they've all come up against him in court one time or another. Though it's hard to believe, Judge Henderson is being blackmailed and extorted. He doesn't want to involve the police. He needs the K-Team to figure out why. Gathering Dark by Candace Fox. Dr. Blair Harbour, once a wealthy, respected pediatric surgeon, is now an ex-con down on her luck. She's determined to keep her nose clean and win back custody of her son. But when her former cellmate begs for her help to find her missing daughter, Blair is compelled to put her newfound freedom on the line. Detective Jessica Sanchez has always had a difficult relationship with the LAPD, and her inheritance of a multi-million-dollar mansion as a reward for catching a killer has just made her police enemy number one. It's been 10 years since Jessica arrested Blair for the cold-blooded murder. So when Jessica opens the door to the disgraced doctor late one night, she expects abuse, maybe even violence. What comes next is a plea for help. 21st Birthday by James Patterson, Book 21 out of 21. When young wife and mother Tara Burke goes missing with her baby girl, all eyes are on her husband Lucas. He paints her not as a missing person, but a wayward wife, until a gruesome piece of evidence turns the investigation criminal. While Chronicle reporter Cindy Thomas pursues the story, and M.A. Claire Washburn harbors theories that run counter to the San Francisco Police Department's ADA, who sizes Lucas up as a textbook domestic offender, who suddenly puts forth an unexpected suspect. If what Lucas tells law enforcement has even a grain of truth, there isn't a woman in the state of California who's safe from the reach of an unspeakable threat. The Vignette at Painted Moon by Susan Mallory. Mackenzie seems to have it all: a beautiful home, close friends, and a successful career as an elite winemaker with the family winery. There's just one problem. It's not her family, it's her husband's. In fact, everything in her life is tied to him. His mother is the closest thing to a mom that she's ever had. Their home is on the family compound. His sister is her best friend. So when she and her husband admit their marriage is over, her pain goes beyond heartbreak. She's on the brink of losing everything: her job, her home, her friends, and worst of all, her family. Staying is an option. She can continue to work at the winery, be friends with her mother-in-law, hug her nieces and nephews, but as an employee, nothing more. Or she can surrender every piece of her heart in order to build a legacy of her own. If she can dare to let go of the life she thought she wanted, she might discover something even more beautiful waiting for her beneath a painted moon. No Safe Place by Richard North Patterson, Book 1 out of 3. In the high stakes, high pressured world of presidential politics, where predators carry microphones and one misstep can savage a lifetime of achievement, Kerry Kilcannon is the rarest player of all. Kilcannon believes he can make the system work, and he just may die trying. Driven by the violent nightmare of his childhood, fueled by forces that few could understand, and burdened by secrets no one must know, Gilcannon is running for president and entering the crucial battleground of California with 7 days to go. But for Gilcannon, these hurdles that his courage, charisma, and compassion may not overcome. The network correspondents he still loves, the reporter bent on their exposure, the rival who'll do anything to win, and the frantic who believes he must murder Kilcannon to protect the right to life. Loyalty by Ingrid Dorff, Book 1 out of 4. The Ludlows are a family of fast-talking Boston lawyers. In the head, Carl Ludlow treats his offsprings like employees, which they are. Black sheep daughter Fina dropped out of law school, but her father keeps her in the fold as the firm's private investigator working alongside her brothers. Juggling family, business, cops, and crooks is no problem for Fina, but when her sister-in-law disappears, she's caught up in a case unlike any she's encountered before. Kyle wants things resolved without police, but the deeper Fina digs, the more impossible that seems. As she unearths more dirt, the demands of family loyalty intensify, but she is after the truth, no matter where it lies. Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, Texas 1921, a time of abundance. The Great War is over. The bounty of the land is plentiful, and America is on the brink of a new optimistic era. But for Elsa Walcott, deemed too old to marry in a time when marriage is a woman's only option, the future seems bleak until the night she meets Rafe and decides to change the direction of her life. With her reputation in ruin, there is only one respectable choice: marriage to a man she barely knows. By 1934, the world has changed. Millions are out of work. Drought has devastated the Great Plains. Farmers are fighting to keep their land and their livelihoods. As crops fail and water dries up and the earth cracks open, dust storms roll relentlessly across the plains. Everything on the Martinelli farm is dying, including Elsa's tenuous marriage. Each day is a desperate battle against nature and a fight to keep her children alive. In this uncertain and perilous time, Elsa, like so many of her neighbors, must make an agonizing choice: fight for the land she loves or leave it behind and go west to California in search of a better life for her and her family. Winter in Paradise by Elan Hildebrand. Book 1 out of 3. Irene Steele shares her life in the beautiful Iowa City Victorian house with a husband who loves her to skywriting sentimental extremes. But as she rings in the new year, one cold and snowy night, everything she thought she knew falls to pieces with a shocking phone call. Her beloved husband, away on business, has been killed in a helicopter crash. Before Irene can even process the news, she first must confront the perplexing detail of her husband's death on the distant Caribbean island of St. John. After Irene and her sons arrive in this faraway paradise, they make yet another shocking discovery. Her husband had been living a secret life. As Irene untangles web of intrigue and deceit, and as she and her sons find themselves drawn into the vibrant island culture, they have to face the truth about their family and about their own futures. The Ranger by Ace Atkins, Book 1 out of 11. After years of war, Army Ranger Quinn Colson returns home to the rugged Rough Hill country of northeast Mississippi to find his native Tupelo County overrun with corruption, decay, meth runners, and violence. His uncle, the longtime country sheriff, is dead. A suicide, he's told, but others, like tomboy deputy Lily Virgil, whisper murder. In the days that follow, it's up to Coulson to discover the truth, not only about his uncle, but about his family, his friends, his town, and himself. And once it's discovered, there's no going back for this real hero of the Deep South. Postmortem by Patricia Cornwell, Book 1 out of 25. Under the cover of night in Richmond, Virginia, a monster strikes, leaving a gruesome trail of stranglings that has paralyzed the city. Medical examiner Kate Scaspetti suspects the worst, a deliberate campaign by a brilliant serial killer whose signature offers precious few clues. With an unerring eye, she calls on the latest advances in forensic research to unmask the madman. But this investigation will test Kay like no other because it's being sabotaged from within, and someone wants her dead. Quantum by Patricia Cornwell, Book 1 out of 2. On the eve of a top secret space mission, Captain Callie Chase detects a tripped alarm in the tunnels deep below a NASA research center. A NASA pilot, quantum physicist, and cybercrime investigator, Kelly knows that a looming blizzard and government shutdown could provide the perfect cover for sabotage with deadly consequences. As it turned out, the danger is worse than she thought. A splatter of dried blood, a missing security badge, a suspicious suicide, and a series of disturbing clues point to Callie's twin sister, Calm, who's been MIA for days. Despite the halt to the countdown to disaster and to Clara's sister's name, Captain Chase digs deep into her vast cybersecurity knowledge and her painful past, probing for answers to her twin's erratic conduct. As time is running out, she realizes that failure means catastrophe, not just for the space program, but for the safety of the whole nation. Along Came a Spider by James Patterson, Book 1 out of 29. Alex Cross is a homicide detective with a PhD in psychology. He works and lives in the ghettos of DC and looks like Muhammad Ali in his prime. He's a tough guy from a tough part of town who wears Harris tree jackets and likes to relax by banging out Gershwin tunes on his baby grand piano. But he also has two adorable kids of his own, and they are his own special vulnerabilities. Jesse Flanagan is the first woman ever to hold a highly sensitive job as supervisor of the Secret Service in Washington. Blonde, mysterious, seductive, she's got an outer shell that's as tough as it's beautiful. She rides her black BMW motorcycle at speeds no less than 100 miles per hour. What is she running from? What is her secret? Alex Cross and Jesse Flanagan are about to have a forbidden love affair at the worst possible time for both of them because Gary Sanjay, who wants to commit the crime of the century, is playing at the top of his game. Sanjay has outsmarted the FBI, the Secret Service, and the police. Who will be his next victim? The House Husband by James Patterson, 44 titles. Harry Portion is the best dad and the best husband, or is he? Detective Tegan Beaumont isn't sure. Detective Tegan is getting closer and closer to discovering the truth about Harry, but there's a twist that she and you will never see coming. Dazzling by Elizabeth Haley. She's a starving artist and he's a billionaire playboy. Siobhan came to New York with a purpose. She wants to become a successful artist. To pay her bills in the meantime, she's the hostess at the Stone Room, a bar for the beautiful and billionaires. She's fine with being on her own until tech billionaire Derek takes her breath away. The Bounty by Janet Ivanovich and Steve Hamilton. Book 7 out of 7. Straight as an arrow, Special Agent Kate O'Hare and international criminal Nick Fox have brought down some of the biggest bad guys out there. But now they face their most dangerous foe yet, a vast, shadowy international organization known only as the Brotherhood. Directly descendant from the Vatican Bank priests who served Hitler during World War II, the Brotherhood is on a frantic search for a lost train loaded with 30 billion in Nazi gold, untouched for over 75 years somewhere in the mountains of Eastern Europe. Kate and Nick know that there's only one man who can find the fortune and bring down the Brotherhood, the same man who taught Nick everything he knows, his father Quentin. As the stakes get higher, they must also rely on Kate's own father, Jake, who shares his daughter's grit and stubbornness. Too bad they can never agree on anything. From a remote monastery in the Swiss Alps to the lawless desert of the Western Sahara, Kate and Nick and the two men who made them who they are today must crisscross the world in a desperate scramble to stop their deadliest foe and the biggest adventure of their lives. Thick as Thieves by Sandra Brown. 20 years ago, in the dead of the night, four seemingly random individuals pulled the ultimate heist and almost walked away with $500,000. But by daybreak, their plan had been shot to hell. One of them was in the hospital, one was in jail, one was dead, and one got away with it. Ada Maxwell, the daughter of the man who disappeared all those years ago, presumably with the money after murdering his accomplice, has never reconciled with her father's abandonment of her and her sister. After countless personal setbacks, she decides to return to her family home near the mysterious Cato Lake and finally get answers to the many questions that torment her. Little does she know, two of her father's co-conspirators, a war hero and a corrupt district attorney, are watching her every move. Ledge Burnett, a rebellious teen at the time of the heist, evaded his jail sentence by enlisting in the Army. Now he's back in town to care for his ailing father and to keep his eye on the country's corrupt district attorney, whom he suspects was a real murderer. Although the two are bound to silence because of the crime they committed together, each has spent years waiting and hoping that the other will make a fatal misstep. But the arrival of their elusive accomplice daughter, Arden, who may know more about the missing money than she's telling, sets them both on red alert. She ignites Ledger's determination to expose the DA's treachery and sparks a desire he wishes to deny. Finding Ashley by Danielle Stale. Melissa Henderson is leading a quiet life. Once a best-selling author, she now pours all of her energy into renovating a Victoria house nestled in the foothills of Royal New England. 6 years ago, she lost her young son to cancer and her marriage dissolved. She stopped writing. It was only when she bought the old house that Melissa found purpose, came alive as she made it beautiful again. After a wildfire that threatens her home appears on the news, Melissa receives a call from her sister Hattie. They were close once, but that was before Melissa withdrew from the world. Now Hattie, who's become a nun at 25, is determined to help Melissa turn a new page, even if it means reopening one of the most painful chapters of her life. At 16, a pregnant Melissa was sent to a gloomy convent in Ireland to have and give up her baby, to spare the family's shame. All these years later, Hattie feels compelled to embark on a journey that will change both their lives forever and track down the child Melissa gave up. The Mysterious Affair at Styles by Agatha Christie, Book 1 out of 45. A refugee of a great war, Poirot is settling in England near Styles Court, the country estate of his wealthy benefactor and elderly Emily Inglethorpe. When Emily is poisoned and the authorities are baffled, Poirot puts his prodigious sleuthing skills to work. Suspects are plentiful, including the victim's much younger husband, her resentful stepsons, her longtime hired companion, a young family friend working as a nurse, and a London specialist on poisons who just happens to be visiting the nearby village. All of them have secrets they are desperate to keep, but none can outwit Poirot as he navigates the ingenious red herrings and plot twists. Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie, Book 1 out of 13. Anyone who murdered Colonel Proton, declared the parson, brandishing a carving knife with a joint of roast beef, would be doing the world a large favor. It was a careless remark for a man of the cloth, and one which was to come back and haunt the clergyman just a few hours later, when the colonel was found shot dead in the clergyman's study. But as Miss Marple soon discovers, the whole village seems to have had a motive to kill the colonel. A Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Here, Dr. Watson, who has just returned from a war in Afghanistan, meets Sherlock Holmes for the first time when they become flatmates at the famous 221B Baker Street. Holmes investigates a murder at Lauriston Gardens as Dr. Watson tags along with Holmes while detailing his amazing deductive abilities. Casino Royale by Ian Fleming. Book 1 out of 14. In the novel that introduced James Bond to the world, Ian Fleming's agent 007 is dispatched to a French casino in Royale les Leroux. His mission: bankrupt a ruthless Russian agent who's been on a bad luck streak at the baccarat table. One of the Smersh most deadly operatives, a man known only as Le Chiffre, has been the prime target of the British Secret Service for years. If Bond can wipe out his bankroll, Le Chiffre will likely retire by his paymasters in Moscow. But what if the cards won't cooperate? After a brutal night at the gaming tables, Bond soon finds himself dodging would-be assassins, fighting off brutal torturers, and going all in to save the life of his beautiful female counterpart, Vesper Lynn.